One of the complaints that I have received, and I think many of my colleagues have received as well, is a complaint that a mail-in ballot was requested in their name, not by them, and even illegitimately cast in their name. They are then forced to vote provisionally, and they reach out to us fearing that their vote was not counted. So once again, not addressing the validity of prior elections. You know, what can the Department of State do to mitigate these concerns? In your previous response to the chairman, you talked about having a valid email address. However, if an individual has had their ballot requested illegitimately, they're not going to put a legitimate email address in there. When you make changes to a Vanguard account, right, Pennsylvania company, you will do it online, but then you get a snail mail letter in the mail that says, we just want to make sure that a change has been made to your account, that you were aware of it. If it was not, you contact us immediately, right? So, you know, for instance, could the Secretary's office issue a postcard, a notice to that primary registered address for that voter when a mail-in ballot is requested at a secondary address or by any individual?
And you raise a number of issues with what you described. One thing that we did see were, and one change that Department of State and counties made was in 2020, if you recall, when you applied, there was a box that said that a lot of voters would check to receive a ballot in the general. So if they applied in the primary, they would then receive a ballot automatically in the general election. And anecdotally in Philadelphia, we had voters say, I got a ballot in the mail, I didn't apply for a ballot. They did apply for a ballot in the primary, they checked the box, they didn't realize they checked the box, and then they got a ballot in the general election. To apply at all, as you know, you have to have a driver's license number, a social security number. So if somebody's requesting a ballot for someone else, they have access, obviously, to their driver's license number or social security number for that to be processed to begin with. That's something we could certainly explore, whether it would be certainly a burden for the counties, but for a postcard or some sort of notification to be sent to an applicant if they applied for a mail-in ballot and received it. If in the cases that you described, I would, depending on how long ago they were, I would encourage them to reach out to local law enforcement or the county board of elections to examine and see. It was an application, right? If it was online, then they have obviously access to people's information. If it's them filling out a paper ballot or paper application, they would have access to that information. There would have been some record of the application to begin with, and that would be a good place to begin an investigation to determine who would have requested a ballot for that voter. And I'm not saying that's the case in this case, I'm not saying this is the case here, but I do know we dealt with a lot of voters who requested a ballot in a primary, received the ballot in the primary, and then received the ballot in the general also because they checked that box. And we know that because we individually looked up every one of those applications to determine whether the person had checked the box or not, to make sure that they weren't sent a ballot that they did not request.
So you believe that this was just a matter of confusion by individuals with that form?
I don't know these individual cases. I can only speak from my experience. I don't know what the voters that you described experienced. All I'm saying is that in every case of that I encountered in Philadelphia, it was because the voter at the time checked that box that resulted in them getting a ballot in the primary and the general election. And none of them were cases that I personally examined. There was a matter of somebody else applying for a ballot for that person and casting that vote.
Very good. Again, I get back to the fact that anytime we've made any type of change to our financial accounts, even when we've done it online and provided an email, we always get that snail mail. And again, we've had conversations about how important a ballot is, the significant value of the ballot, and something we need to safeguard. So I appreciate your perspective, and again, think it's something that's very worth protecting.
And what
so.
you described, Senator, I think is absolutely worth considering, whether it's the county or the state, whether there is the time that would be allowed for a postcard to go out saying that somebody has applied for a ballot for them. And again, I certainly didn't mean to suggest that your voters that you described did something unknowingly that resulted in them getting a ballot. I really don't know those situations, whether it is voter fraud, whether it is them actually just checking what was called the permanent box to receive a ballot again in the general election.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.